November 23, 1996. Three men with an axe and a fire extinguisher hijack a Boeing 767 over the Indian Ocean. They demand to fly to Australia, but there's a massive problem. The plane doesn't have enough fuel. The pilots beg them to understand. The hijackers refuse to listen. For hours, the aircraft flies towards certain death, while 175 people pray for a miracle. When the fuel finally runs out, the pilot attempts an impossible water landing. Tourists on a beach capture everything on camera. This is Ethiopian Airlines Flight 961, and you're about to see real footage of people dying. Welcome to Black Box Secrets. I'm your host, and today we're investigating one of the most documented aviation disasters in history. This isn't a story reconstructed from black boxes and testimony. This is a hijacking and crash that was filmed by multiple cameras from multiple angles in real time. The footage exists, and it's horrifying. What you're about to hear is the story behind those images, the desperate struggle in the cockpit, and the split-second decisions that determined who lived and who died. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications because we're uncovering aviation's most shocking true stories every single week. November 23, 1996. Ethiopian Airlines Flight 961 was scheduled to operate from Addis Ababa, Ethiopia to Nairobi, Kenya, then continue to Brazzaville, Republic of Congo, and finally to Lagos, Nigeria and Abidjan, Ivory Coast. It was a long multi-stop route across Africa, operated by a Boeing 767-200ER. At the controls was Captain Leul Abate, 42, an experienced Ethiopian Airlines pilot with thousands of flight hours. First Officer Yonas Makuria sat beside him. In the cabin, 163 passengers from multiple countries settled in for what should have been a routine regional flight. Among them were business people, aid workers, tourists, and families. At 9 a.m. local time, Flight 961 departed Addis Ababa. The weather was clear. The aircraft performed normally. After a brief stop in Nairobi, where some passengers deplaned and others boarded, the Boeing 767 took off again at 11:40 a.m., heading for the next stop in Brazzaville. 20 minutes later, three men stood up in the cabin and revealed their weapons. The three hijackers were Ethiopians seeking political asylum. Armed with an axe and a fire extinguisher, they stormed the cockpit and took control of the aircraft. Their demand was simple but impossible: fly to Australia. Captain Abate tried to reason with them. "We don't have enough fuel to reach Australia," he explained. "Australia is over 6,000 kilometers away. We only have fuel to reach Brazzaville, maybe a few hundred kilometers beyond that." The hijackers didn't believe him. They thought he was lying, trying to trick them. They had no understanding of aviation, no concept of fuel consumption or range. They believed that if the aircraft could fly at all, it could fly anywhere. One hijacker held the axe to Captain Abate's neck. "Fly to Australia, or we crash the plane right now." Abate made a decision that would save many lives. He would pretend to comply while actually flying along the African coastline, staying within range of airports. He turned the aircraft eastward, toward the Indian Ocean, as if heading to Australia. But he flew a course that kept them near the coast of East Africa, hoping the hijackers wouldn't notice. For hours, this deception continued. The hijackers sat in the cockpit, watching the pilots, convinced they were flying to Australia. Captain Abate flew routes that took them past multiple airports, Djibouti, Mombasa, hoping for a chance to land. But the hijackers refused to allow any landing that wasn't Australia. Meanwhile, the fuel gauges steadily dropped. As the hours passed, Captain Abate repeatedly tried to make the hijackers understand. "Look at the fuel gauges," he pleaded. "We are running out of fuel. We must land soon, or we will crash." The hijackers thought it was a trick. They had seen movies where pilots lied about fuel to force landings. They didn't believe the danger was real. One hijacker threatened, "If you land anywhere except Australia, we will crash the plane into a building." First Officer Makuria supported the captain, showing the hijackers the instruments, explaining the mathematics of fuel consumption. The hijackers dismissed it all as lies. The Boeing 767 continued flying along the East African coast, now over the Indian Ocean near the Comoros Islands. Below them, the turquoise waters sparkled in the afternoon sun. Tourists relaxed on white sand beaches. Nobody on those beaches knew that above them 175 people were flying toward catastrophe. At approximately 3 p.m., the fuel warning lights began illuminating. The aircraft had been in the air for over 3 hours since leaving Nairobi. The tanks were nearly empty. Captain Abate made one final plea: "We have minutes of fuel remaining. We must land at Comoros immediately, or we will crash into the ocean and everyone will die. The hijackers finally began to realize the situation was real. But by then it was too late. At 3:10 p.m., the left engine flamed out. The sudden loss of thrust caused the aircraft to yaw left. Warning alarms blared in the cockpit. Captain Abate immediately declared an emergency to air traffic control and began an emergency descent toward Comoros, the nearest land. Minutes later, the right engine quit. Both engines were dead. The Boeing 767, loaded with 175 people, became a glider. With no engine power, Abate had only one chance: glide the aircraft to a water landing near the Comoros coast, as close to the beach as possible to give people a chance of survival. The hijackers, finally understanding the catastrophe they had caused, panicked. They fought with the pilots for control. In the cockpit chaos, one hijacker grabbed the control yoke, pulling and pushing randomly. Captain Abate fought to maintain control, but with a hijacker physically interfering, the aircraft became unstable. On the beaches of Grande Comore Island, tourists were enjoying the afternoon. Some were swimming. Others were sunbathing. Several had video cameras, filming the beautiful ocean scenery. Then someone noticed an aircraft approaching, flying impossibly low over the water. Tourists began filming. What they captured would become some of the most dramatic aviation footage ever recorded. Captain Abate lined up the Boeing 767 for a water landing parallel to the beach, trying to ditch in shallow water where survivors might be able to swim to shore. He had minimal control. The hijacker was still fighting him for the yoke. The aircraft was descending too fast. Flight attendants shouted final instructions: brace, 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 remove your shoes, unbuckle after impact, get out immediately. At 3:18 p.m., Ethiopian Airlines Flight 961 struck the Indian Ocean approximately 500 meters from shore. The impact was catastrophic. The tourist videos captured everything. The Boeing 767 hit the water at an angle, nose slightly high. The moment the fuselage touched the water, the left wing tip dipped, catching the surface. The wing acted like a pivot point, causing the aircraft to cartwheel violently. The fuselage broke into 3 sections. The nose separated. The tail section broke away. The center section, still partially intact, began to sink. Water rushed into the cabin through broken windows and ruptures in the fuselage. Within seconds, the interior was flooded. Passengers who had unbuckled their seatbelts as instructed were able to escape through the breaks in the fuselage. Those who remained buckled, following their instinct to stay seated during an emergency, were trapped as the water rose. Some passengers inflated their life vests before exiting the aircraft, another instinctive but fatal mistake. The inflated vests prevented them from diving under the water to escape through submerged exits. They were trapped against the ceiling as the cabin flooded. The tourist videos show people escaping from the broken fuselage, swimming toward the beach. They show others trapped inside, visible through the windows, unable to get out. They show the aircraft sections sinking slowly into the blue water. Local fishermen and tourists immediately rushed to help. People swam out to the wreckage, pulling survivors from the water. Small boats raced to the scene. Scuba divers from nearby resorts dove into the wreckage, trying to rescue people trapped inside. But the aircraft was sinking fast. Within minutes, all 3 sections were completely submerged. Those who hadn't escaped in the first few seconds were lost. When the final count was made, 125 people had died, including all 3 hijackers. Only 50 survived, most with serious injuries. Captain Leul Abate and First Officer Leul Abate both survived. Despite everything, despite the hijacking and the fuel exhaustion and the interference at the controls, they had saved 50 lives through their skill and determination. The investigation into Flight 961 was straightforward. The cause was clear: hijacking. The hijackers had forced the aircraft to continue flying until it ran out of fuel. The water landing was executed as well as possible under impossible circumstances. However, the investigation also examined why so many passengers died despite the relatively successful ditching near shore. They discovered several critical factors: seatbelt use. Many passengers remained buckled during the water landing, following their training for normal crashes. But in a water landing, remaining buckled can be fatal. Passengers should unbuckle immediately after impact to escape before the cabin floods. Life vest inflation. Safety cards instruct passengers not to inflate life vests until outside the aircraft. Many passengers inflated their vests inside the cabin. When the aircraft filled with water, the inflated vests prevented them from diving under the rising water to reach exits. They were trapped against the ceiling and drowned. Exit awareness. In the chaos, many passengers didn't know where the nearest exit was located. Seconds mattered, and confusion was deadly. Hijacker interference. The hijacker who grabbed the controls during the final descent made the landing far more violent than it would have been otherwise. Captain Abate was fighting both the aircraft and a panicked hijacker, making precise control impossible. The Ethiopian government conducted the investigation with international assistance. The findings led to enhanced safety training regarding water landings and proper life vest use. The 50 survivors of Flight 961 each had their own story of how they escaped. Some were seated near breaks in the fuselage and were ejected during impact. Others managed to unbuckle and swim out through shattered windows. A few were pulled from the wreckage by rescue divers who risked their own lives. Captain Abate became a hero in Ethiopia and throughout the aviation community. Despite the hijacking, despite the interference at the controls, despite running out of fuel over the ocean, he had managed to bring the aircraft down close enough to shore that 50 people survived. Aviation experts noted that without his skill and decision to fly along the coast rather than truly heading to Australia, there would likely have been 0 survivors. The tourist videos of Flight 961's crash became some of the most studied footage in aviation safety training. The videos clearly show the moment the wing tip catches the water, the violent cartwheel, the breakup of the fuselage. They show passengers escaping and others trapped. They show everything. Aviation safety instructors use this footage to teach water landing procedures, life vest protocols, and the importance of rapid evacuation. The videos are graphic and disturbing, but they teach lessons that save lives. If you search for Ethiopian Airlines 961 online, you can find this footage. But be warned, you will be watching real people die. It's not a movie. It's not a simulation. It's actual footage of a disaster, and it's deeply disturbing. Ethiopian Airlines continued operations after the crash, implementing enhanced security measures to prevent hijackings. The airline grew to become one of Africa's largest and most successful carriers. Aircraft manufacturers and airlines worldwide updated water landing training. The specific lessons from Flight 961, particularly regarding life vests and seatbelts, became standard in safety briefings. The Comoros government erected a memorial near the crash site. Locals still remember the day a Boeing 767 fell from the sky, and how their community rushed to help, saving lives in the water. Ethiopian Airlines Flight 961 taught critical lessons, hijacking protocols. Pilots must never allow hijackers to control the aircraft in ways that endanger everyone. Captain Abate's decision to deceive the hijackers and stay near the coast saved lives. Water landing procedures. Unbuckle immediately after impact. Do not inflate life vests until outside the aircraft. Know where exits are located. Cockpit security. The incident highlighted the need for reinforced cockpit doors that prevent hijacker access, a change that became standard after 9/11. Fuel management. The incident reinforced the importance of adequate fuel planning and the dangers of any interference with normal flight operations. Today, pieces of Ethiopian Airlines Flight 961 still rest on the ocean floor near Grande Comore Island. Divers occasionally visit the wreckage, now overgrown with coral and inhabited by fish. It's an underwater grave for 125 people and a monument to the 50 who survived. The crash of Flight 961 reminds us that in aviation, everything can go wrong simultaneously. Hijacking, fuel exhaustion, interference at the controls, and a water landing. And yet, even in the worst circumstances, skill and determination can save lives. Captain Abate didn't save everyone, but he saved 50 people who would have died if he had given up. The footage still exists online, watched by thousands every year. Each time someone watches, they're seeing the final moments of 125 people. They're also seeing the survival of 50 others. It's tragedy and triumph, captured forever on tourist video cameras on a beach in the Comoros. Have you seen the footage of Ethiopian Airlines 961? If you haven't, should you watch it? Is it respectful to the victims, or is it exploitation? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more deep investigations into aviation disasters and incredible survival stories, subscribe to Black Box Secrets and hit that notification bell. We're uncovering the truth behind aviation's most dramatic moments every single week. Thanks for watching, and remember, survival sometimes depends on knowing what not to do.